Okay, this is another mending day, and what I'm mending today are these 14-inch craftsman hand screw clamps. Sometimes they're called block clamps. The problem with these clamps is that the handles are not pinned. Okay, and what that means is, as you're tightening it, this handle will unscrew, or possibly when you're untightening it after you're releasing an item, they could come out. I suppose these are glued on somehow. And what happened was, over the years of using these, I noticed that the handles were coming loose. Okay, I have added a pin on this one here, and I'm going to add a pin over on that other one, because this particular clamp, these handles have come loose. These other ones, when I test them now, they're not loose, so I'm not going to worry about them. It's possible they never came loose. I can't remember exactly. All I know is that the handles came loose, and it was more than one of them. Now when I test them, I see this one. If I tighten it, now I put this clamp on here so that these cannot move, so I can test this in both directions to make sure it won't unloosen. Okay, you find out, see, one of these is right-handed threaded, this is a left-handed thread, and the other one's right-handed thread. You want to make sure the handle is on all the way onto the thread before you pin it. Okay, so the way I did that was just by blocking them, clamping them. They can't go in either direction. Then I turn this until it goes onto it, and then I just go as far as it'll go, and then it stops. Then I'm going to pin it. That's what I've done. And that's also to test if it's loose. Here I've got them all the way, and when I apply a reasonable amount of force in either direction on this, if I move the clamp over there, then these don't come loose. In other words, I can't do it with the force of my own hand, and I'm not going to go crazy on this. I can obviously pin these too in the future if I need to. Okay, so little story here. Okay, that is the so-called unlimited lifetime warranty of Craftsman hand tools. And you might say, well, gee, why would I even bother to repair these? I can just bring them in for a replacement. Well, I did bring these in for a replacement. It must have been probably 10 years ago, or possibly more. These are over 40 years. These are probably about 40 years old. And the time I brought them in, the fellow said, well, we don't sell these. Well, first he probably challenged whether or not these were included. The one I had brought in for replacement was probably this one, which the actual guarantee had probably worn off, and I wasn't thinking to bring the other one to show that there was still evidence that these were covered by the warranty or the guarantee. Okay. Anyway, he told me it wasn't covered, but it wouldn't matter because they didn't stock this item. This was the Sears in Burlington. And he said they don't stock it anyway, so he didn't have one to give me. And I'd have to, who knows what, contact Sears, mail it in, I don't know. Anyway. Well, finally, now that I have more time to do this type of thing, when I check online, what I find is they don't manufacture these anymore. So I couldn't imagine how I would ever get a replacement by bringing it into a store, because they don't carry them anymore. Okay, fine. So I'm going to do the repair. I did the repair. I went to my hardware store. I got a 1/8 inch by 1 inch tension pin. That's what they called it at the hardware store, but these go by other names too. The idea is that after you drill the hole and put that pin in, you want it not to loosen up as you're operating it. Now, another way to repair these is to simply drill a hole, put a finish nail through it, and then clip it at the two ends, and then you can peen the two ends so it doesn't come out. It'll probably be fine. But it could come loose over the years because, of course, the force of tightening and untightening it is actually going to wear away at that nail. Now, this is supposed to apply tension. So, honestly, I really don't know. But what I've seen is the more expensive clamps have the tension pin. Okay? So, and the other thing about it I should say is the tension pin is relatively easy to remove. Not that you'd ever want to remove it, but you could. You could disassemble this. You could actually replace the faces. Doesn't matter. Okay, now I'm just going to go ahead and repair the other side. First, I'm going to punch it, okay? Because I don't want this to wander. It's not the easiest thing in the world to drill a straight hole down through something like this. Okay, so I'm going to do it in steps, and I'll use the pause. Okay, first step, I just used this punch. I just whacked it a couple of times just to get me a starting point. And now I'll just start drilling. Okay, it's an 1/8 of an inch hole for an 1/8 inch tension pin. I sell it at an 1/8 of an inch, so I assume that means to drill at 1/8 inch hole. So it seemed to work on the other one, so that's what I'm gonna do. I suppose you could drill a hole that's even, I don't know what, I'm just assuming that that's how these are marketed and sold. So that's what I'll do. Okay, I'm starting to drill. I'm going to use plenty of oil because I know I need to go through that threaded rod, and I don't want to dull my bit excessively, and I'll just go bit at a time and work my way through. The trick here is to try to keep the drill as vertical as possible. A drill press is really going to be a much better job because I'm going to end up with a hole that's slightly wobbled because I can't hold it exactly perfect every time, but it seems good enough. Okay, I've worked my way through the wood, and now it's going in through the spindle. Adding plenty of oil. Okay, I think I'm almost through it. Okay, now it's time to clean up. Okay, now it's time to drive the pin through. Okay, so far so good. I'm going to use a punch just so I don't end up distorting the end of it too badly with a hammer. Hopefully that'll help drive it down straight through without bending it off. Okay, now it's almost all the way. This 1 inch is just a teeny bit shorter than what I would have wanted. I would have wanted it to, stick out a teeny bit on each side. So this I'm going to drive through until it's flush, or maybe even a teeny bit below, because that's what I need to get it to come on both sides. Okay, it's flush on this side, and if I turn it over, you can see that I'm going to have to file off. There's a burr, and it's slightly below flush. So what I'm going to do on this side is using the pointed punch. I'm just going to drive it just a teeny bit more to try to make it the same on both sides. Okay, I drove that down just a teeny bit more. I filed off the burr on the back side, and that's just about flush. So this looks like it's done, and these clamps are ready to go back into service. They were actually a little bit usable even as they were, but it required excessively fidgeting with them. Anyway, in this case, these clamps, they're tricky to use, and you want to be able to move in and out on both of these without having to worry about one of these handles slipping. So that's all for today. Thanks.